Welcome to the Destiny of Manufacturing podcast, powered by the Precision Metal Forming Association. I am your host, Dean Phillips. Proud to be here with you. Today from Dayton Rogers, I have with me their Executive Director of Human Resources, Stephanie Ingalls. Welcome, Stephanie.
Hi, Dean. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
It is fantastic to have you here. Thank you so much for taking time to be on the show. Right off the bat, I ask everybody this. What is your big takeaway?
Well, my big takeaway today is going to be that manufacturers need to focus on recruiting and attracting the next generation, so Gen Z.
So when you say that, can you tell me what do you think are some of the key points that people need to take advantage of when they're trying to attract and retain those people?
Sure. So I think there's a multitude of different things that, retain employees, right? But this incoming generation is a little different. And so they need to be approached a little differently. Just changing the way you think about things. I think if I could list a few key points, which I'm sure we'll get into as we go through this, but some of the things that I hear consistently as I'm talking to this generation, an empowering work culture. That's a non-negotiable. They have to have it. They want to see growth potential. They care about personal relationships with the people they work with. So no more of this clocking in and when you hit the door, you're only at work. They are intertwining that with their personal lives. So in addition to that, to take it a step further, having that work-life balance. I hear that one over and over and over. So I'm hoping at some point we'll be able to spend a little bit of time on work-life balance and what does that look like, and how do manufacturers intercept that and still run a business?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think that the things that the next generation has been looking for and communicating this message out to everybody who was listening. It wasn't that they weren't communicating with us being older generation or people at a manufacturing facility. They communicated it. We just weren't the best at listening to it. It was like, well, we're giving you a job. Why are these other things even important?
Yep.
And that becomes more and more of a challenge. Now, you said something really interesting there when you talked about how we retain them. What do you think is different from not only attracting, but then retaining Gen Z or even just uh, younger people in general?
Well, first I want to back up just one quick step here because I don't know that everybody is quite clear on who Gen Z is. I think a lot of times the millennial and Gen Z line kind of
Mm-hmm.
gets a bit. So Gen Z is, just from a factual standpoint, are individuals born from 1997 to 2012. So that's kind of the age range that I'm speaking about during this podcast. But I mean, Dean, they're huge. They make up 32% of the people in the world.
And
32
growing
and growing, right?
as a
And
percentage of the workforce, as a person, and on the earth, as I guess at the end of the day. Is it like we're not building more baby boomers, we're not building more Gen Xers, we're not building.
that's right. That's good. But I mean, it's huge. So, in terms of what's coming, I mean, it's not an if, it's a when. This is something that is on the way. It's already in motion. So we have to be able to really model ourselves to a place where they want to come work for us. They want to be involved in manufacturing. Manufacturing is the lifeblood of the US. We have to continue to make products in the US, and to do that, we need to retain good talent. So, I mean, I'm just looking at, so I think I looked up, and I don't know if it's on the fact sheet that we sent over, but I think, now don't quote me on this, but they make up about 40% of US consumers right now. They spent $332 billion in the US last year. I mean, this is crazy. This is crazy. So they are coming. And I think a couple of the things that we have to do, well, I guess we'll just start talking about what we're going to do to retain them. How do we attract them? So I think the first thing that we can look at is, what is your company doing to embrace digitalization?
Yes.
And this is something I think that gets talked about a lot. There's a lot of buzzwords that go into this, AI, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, all of this good stuff. But how do you apply that to your actual company and what you guys are doing to recruit and retain people, right?
Right.
So let me just ask you a question here, and this may be different because I know you're doing the podcast, but how many screens are in front of you right now?
3.
Okay.
Actually, take that back. 4 if I count my iPad.
Oh, there you go. Okay. So I feel like that is the average. The average for a Gen Z worker, they like to have at least 5 screens in front of them at one time to work off of. I know that for right. That's kind of crazy to think about.
And everybody made fun of Elvis because he had 3 TVs in his basement that he would watch programs, and at that time there were only 3 channels, so he wasn't missing anything.
He was ahead of his time. Yeah, I mean, it's I'm working off of 3 screens right now. That's 2 less than their expectation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that you can take a look at. What does your IT infrastructure look like? Are you able to provide them the working environment that they feel most comfortable working in? Because
And do you,
more efficient, right?
yes, well, and you want them to be as efficient as possible, and you want them to feel like, I guess, I did a seminar here at Metal Form at the Fab Tech show last year.
Yeah.
And when I did it on workforce. And one of the things that I brought up is that you have to have actions that go along with what you say. It's one thing to say, oh, well, we're very forward thinking, where we actually embrace technology. Do you? Does it look that way? Does somebody who's coming in applying for a job, would they see it? I was telling some of the people, I said, look, have them take out their phone during the interview. I want you to have them take out their phone, have QR codes around your plant for work instructions. Why are you printing work instructions? This is how they exist. This is how they want to see things. So you have to do things so that they feel like you're thinking about them, that you are actually walking the walk, not just saying the words, not just saying, oh, well, we really are interested in flexible schedules. Well, are you? Because some of the companies that I know that are the most successful do things like, okay, if you have kids, you can come in at 6, work till 7:30, take your kids to school, then come back at 9, work from 9, and some of that's working from home, some of it's, but you have to have some flexibility. Otherwise, they're just not going to come back. And the reality is they know the power they have. Believe me, I've had several Gen Zers that have given speeches at Toastmasters.
Okay.
In my involvement in that, they have said, hey, we know we're the future of the workforce. So, and we are leveraging our power. And we're not going to stay at a company that we're not happy. We're not going to stay at a company who doesn't do the things that align with our goals, not being impactful if the company isn't impactful in the way that they feel like. So I think you're absolutely right. You have to convey that message to them on the interview. And thank you so much, because one of the things I know is very true today that never used to be the case, but HR people that are involved have to be the best salesperson at the company.
Yes, there's definitely a selling element to it. That is sure.
What are some of the biggest things that you've seen change that the new workforce is coming in, what they expect?
So I think right? Similar to what you were saying before, you have to more or less tailor the employee experience from the moment that they make contact with you. The expectation is a seamless transition, you know? No more coming in, filling out paper applications and waiting 2 weeks to hear back if you got an interview. It has to be as immediate as you can make it. So what can you do in your company to make sure that that transition is seamless? Look at it from the employee or the potential employee's perspective. Do they fill out an application on their phone? Do they scan the QR code like you were talking about? There's so many different ways to simply make a QR code. You can look that up. There's so many converters. Most software applications have a button now that will help you create a QR code for a web page. So doing these little things that elevate that experience for the employee just makes you that much more attractive for them. So they scan the QR code, they fill out the application, or bonus points if they can just download their resume and it automatically fills it out for them, right?
Yes.
AI has that capability now. So, work with your IT teams to see if that's something that's possible. But once they fill that out, at that point, they either go to a calendar where they can schedule an interview with you based on what your calendar looks like, or, you are able to follow up with him within 24 hours,
Right.
as soon as possible. I mean, the faster you can make these things happen, because we're in an age now where if you want something, you can get it almost immediately. I mean,
Right.
there is no downtime, there is no wait. So if you are one of those companies that isn't able to respond in that time frame, you're going to lose them,
Yeah.
you know?
It, absolutely. I have also seen that a lot of the newer workforce is they have a low tolerance for lousy technology.
100%.
So if you have a bad website, if you have a bad process within your system, they are not very tolerant of that. And I've told several of the companies that I work with that you really need to make sure that your stuff works. Because if your website has holes in it or there's problems that you have logging in or things like that, they are moving on. They're not spending any time solving your problems because, oh, well, you just have to do this. You download this, you click here, and of course it has to be resized because it's not, doesn't have any kind of automatic, they're just not interested. All of these illustrate that you are not in touch with technology and they don't want to work there.
Exactly, because they see that as a window into what your company looks like. They see that into a window, what is my day-to-day gonna be? It's gonna
Yes,
be pulling teeth to get to the next step in the process, or does it
right.
just how it's supposed to?
Yes, yes. Yeah, absolutely. How did you get involved in manufacturing?
So I started in manufacturing when I was 18. Originally, I applied for Dayton Rogers straight out of high school, and it was just supposed to be a part-time job while I got myself through college. So I started out in reception and moved around a couple different departments from there. And found out as I started to learn more, I really liked it. So I originally was going to school for something different, and I ended up switching my major to business because I learned that there's so much more to manufacturing, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So we ended up the company decided to open a location in South Carolina, and I was originally supposed to only come down to South Carolina to help open it up, kind of get everything running. And once I got here, so just a couple months. And once I got here, I said, what do you need me to learn so that I can stay? What positions are, available? And so they said, well, we really need somebody out in manufacturing. So I did spend a good bit of time out on the shop floor doing different things. And from that, I think that really just solidified, why I do this, why I love this job so much,
Yeah.
and that's what gets me excited to get this new generation coming in, because they don't know. They don't
Right.
know how great it can be.
Yeah. And do you think Is it important during the interview to talk to them about why if you follow Simon Sinek's book about, start with why. It, do you feel like when you're at the interview process that that's a good time to really start talking about why we do what we do? And by extension of that, you're ex, you're explaining to them why you're impact. You're explaining to them why manufacturing and why Dayton Rogers is impactful to people's lives.
I do think it's important to get into that with them. But I think that I'm more interested when I'm doing an interview with somebody in finding out what they want, what
Mhm.
motivates, and seeing if, the things that they want for their future are going to align with where the company is going. Is this going to be a good fit? Right? Because I would never want to bring somebody in here. Usually, when we're interviewing people, it's people that already have positions, right? I mean, the workforce is just in that vein right now.
Right.
But it really is, it has to be that partnership, because that also helps, that's part of the glue that helps keep people here. That's why they want to stay, because they feel like they are a part of it. If they want the same things we do, they are automatically going to buy in.
Right. And I think that a lot of leaders today have talked about the fact that it isn't skills as much as it is culture. Does your desire, what your goals are for a culture, does it align with what the company has as a culture?
Yep.
Because that is one of the most difficult things to change. You can train people. If somebody's skilled and willing to learn, you can train them in almost any skill set.
Yep.
But you can't teach them to be passionate. You can't teach them to be involved. You can't teach them to share and work in a team. They have to the message has to be there that for the culture too.
Yep.
Is is that something that you guys focus on?
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Yes. We start out their first day orientation talking about almost exclusively nothing but our culture. The whole first day of their orientation, is a basically lesson in the company culture,
Mhm.
how we operate here, how we treat our people, how we expect to receive others, how to talk to people, how to communicate. I mean, it it's one of those things that it's something that will always take consistent maintenance. But if
Mhm.
you have the right people on your team working with you, it's going to be something that just becomes the flow of how things are done every day. you know
Sure. Yes. Yes, absolutely.
it's huge for us. I mean, that's almost our sole priority outside of course, manufacturing parts. But from a management standpoint, what we place importance on, how we treat our people, when we go through discussions, I mean, when we have meetings, we start out talking about culture and how the flow of the meeting is going to go. We set the expectations. Everyone here is treated with respect.
Yeah. Have do you feel that also in your development from a workforce standpoint, do you feel that you have to build a plan for the new workforce? Meaning, here's here's where you're going to start, here's where you can work towards, and build that roadmap for them so that they can see goals and metrics that they need to hit if they want to continue. Because I think that the next generation has this desire to see, well, I want to be here in 2 years. And you have to kind of build them a roadmap of how to get there. As in HR, do you feel that that's more important now?
I do think that it is important, but I feel like we need to take that even one step further. So, it is important to have the framework set up so that there's kind of a guide, more or less, of how this would typically go. But then I think where the rubber really meets the road with people is when you get in a room together and you say, okay, here's the typical plan of how this would go. But what do you want? What are you interested in? You know, do you want to try this? And it's the continuous checking in. You know, we have
Yeah.
quarterly meetings with every employee and we check in with them and say, hey, this is where we were last quarter. How do you feel about this path? Is this still something you would like to do? You know, and if not, then we pivot. And I
Yeah.
think that those are the important things, the checking in with them to make sure that what they're doing is still important and drives them and motivates them. And if it doesn't, then helping guide them to something else that is going to get them there.
Right. And you've been, I think that people don't understand how much investment you've made in them as an employee. Just to, so you want to make sure that you're doing everything you can to retain them. Some
Yeah.
companies that are the worst have a 3-to-1, or the best companies have 3-to-1 roughly. You know, they have to get 3 people in order to get one to stick, uh, or less. The worst companies are 10-to-1 or worse. That is a scary number from a human resources person, because that means you're bringing in 10 people and they're working, you're starting, you're training them, you're investing in them, and they don't stay. But in my experience, most of the ones that don't stay is because something you didn't do during the interview process.
Mhm.
You didn't identify. If somebody leaves at lunchtime, they came in on their first day and they leave at lunch, something was missed.
Yep.
You
Yep. Yep. Well, and I mean, every interaction you have with somebody, you know, it either builds that relationship or it detracts from it. There's no
Mhm.
and ever. It's either you're building the relationship or you're detracting from it. So go into every conversation you have with that mindset. You know, you're either going to add positive feedback to this employee or they're going to perceive it negatively. So that's what employers can do to, you know, be in better control of what they're doing day to day. You know, you really got to be mindful. It's tough. You got to be on it.
Mhm. Well, I think if it becomes part of your normal process, I think it doesn't seem like that. I think when you're first starting out and you don't have that process in place where you're actually checking in, hey, how are you feeling about this? Does this seem to be working for you? Is this getting you where you want to go? Do you feel that you're meeting your goals through this? And I don't think that we've done a very good job of checking in with people. Uh,
Yeah. Well, the business, I mean, you know, it is at the end of the day still a business, but we
Absolutely.
have to find a way to merge, you know, the human side of things with the business side because that's the new expectation.
Yes. Yes. We are just about out of time, Steph. I always ask everybody, what is your involvement? Why are you involved with PMA?
Oh, so I've been involved with PMA, I want to say close to about 10 years now. So I'm the current acting district chair of the Southeastern District for PMA. So basically what that means is there's a couple states in the South, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Georgia, and West Virginia, is what my territory covers. And we do different plant tours, we get together for different things. Um, you know, and it's more or less for the networking. The reason that I stay with PMA, that I love PMA, there's so many different things, so many different veins of PMA that are wonderful. But I would say the top two for me are the networking and just being able to, you know, really be keyed in and tuned into the people in our industry and, you know, what's happening and feeling like you're not on a silo. If something comes up, you can reach out to people who are your peers or sometimes even competitors and work together to, you know, find solutions to things. I'm part of an email thread right now where, you know, somebody's trying to work through their handbook stuff. They're a direct competitor to us. And, you know, we're sharing handbooks back and forth because at the end of the day, we're all in this together, you know?
Mhm.
So, um, the networking is definitely a huge one. And then the advocacy. The Franklin Partnership advocates on behalf of PMA members, and I just can't say enough about them. They are going to Washington. They are doing their best to try to advocate for us, to make sure that the bills that are passed are in favor of manufacturing in the United States. So they're wonderful. PMA is just a great group to work with, and I'm very lucky to be in this position.
That's tremendous. And I do want to echo your support of Franklin Group, because a lot of people don't realize that they don't just advocate for members. They don't just advocate for the Precision Metal Forming Association. They advocate for our industry. When
Yeah,
we've had issues that came up with foreign trade and other things like that, they are here for the industry. Whether you're a member or not, they are supporting you in manufacturing. I think
yeah,
it's important for people to realize that they are our voice. They are our only voice, really.
yeah.
When it comes to manufacturing in the past, there was nobody else speaking out against things. They were the only one.
Well, and I think to add to that, they are the voice, but also they are getting results,
Yes.
which is it's commendable. I mean, it's hard to move around anything in Washington. So, you got to hand it.
Yes. Absolutely. It's a great goal and a fantastic job they do. Hey, how can everybody get in touch with you, Stephanie?
So you can reach me via email, singalls@daytonrogers.com. I'd love to talk to anybody that has any questions about how to continue to attract this generation, some things that you can do for your company. I think that's probably going to be the best way via email, potentially LinkedIn too, but if you want a quick response, email is the way to go.
Gotcha. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for being here. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Everybody, we thank you for being here with the show and listening to the podcast or watching the podcast. Please go out and make it a great day.